One of the key factors in the success is that it's a positive film. It has heroes and villains, and that it essentially is a fun movie to watch. It's been a long time since people have been able to go to the movies and see a sort of straightforward, wholesome, fun adventure.
Hello, Gary.
Good morning.
It's delightful to know you, and may I say thank you for a delightful movie.
Thank you.
It's so nice to have a clean, a clever, and a very interesting movie that the entire family can go to.
That was one of our original intentions, was that there wasn't a movie playing that we could go see, and talked about having a good old-fashioned Flash Gordon space movie that everyone could enjoy. Since there wasn't one, we should make one.
Now, I've heard this film described in all sorts of ways, and I've seen it for myself. How would you sum it up? How do you sum up the story of the thing?
Well, it's good against evil. It's George's homage to every film that he ever loved. George loves films, and that's what this film is about, is movies. Every scene is, in some way, reminiscent of a scene in a film that we all loved before, like in High Noon, there's a bar sequence, only this time it's with monsters instead of Gary Cooper. You've got The Wizard of Oz. We have a robot that looks sort of like the Tin Man. You have adventure like Robin Hood. We do swing acrosses. I guess it could even be like Tarzan. Buck Rogers. It's got everything in it, every ingredient. George made a movie that he wanted to see, not a movie that he thought the public would want to see, because if he thought that if he'd made a movie like that, we would be seeing a disaster film again or something like that, probably.
And winning yet another battle in space was the hero of Star Wars, Luke Skywalker, known in real life as Mark Hamill. And this is Mark's very first appearance on British children's television. So Mark, welcome to Blue Peter.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much for coming along.
My pleasure. I'm surprised you call it a children's show, because when we were filming the movie, I watched Blue Peter all the time.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that. Tell me, how did you get the part of Luke Skywalker in the first place?
I wish I had an adorable anecdote to tell you, that I was in a restaurant and George Lucas, the director, was having a meal, and he leaped up and said, "There's Luke Skywalker." I auditioned? No. Unfortunately, I auditioned like anybody else, and...
And you got the part?
Yeah.
Had you done any acting before?
Yes, I started doing plays at about age 12, and I went to Los Angeles City College in the theater arts department for 2 years, and I'd racked up, I finally figured out about 148 credits before doing a feature film.
Yeah, but Star Wars is really the first really big feature that you've done.
Sure.
Had some very big names in, Sir Alec Guinness and Peter Cushing. How did you feel working with them?
Well, I was just staggered. I thought, there's no way I can actually meet this man, much less appear in the same scene with him. I'm speaking of Sir Alec because, unfortunately, I never had a scene with Peter Cushing. But he was surprised because I went to work 2 days just to watch Peter Cushing work, even though I didn't work with him. And I'm a fan at heart. I had him sign a couple of posters.
Oh, that's nice. Can you tell us a little about what the story is about in Star Wars?
Well, the story, when you actually put it into words, is only so much nonsense to hang a great visual experience onto. It's the stuff that fairy tales are made of. We have a fairy princess. We have an innocent farm boy who yearns for adventure. Alec Guinness is a wise old wizard who teaches me a mystical force, somewhat like Merlin would teach a young King Arthur. Harrison Ford plays Han Solo, a cynical space pirate that we hire to transport us through the galaxy. Basically, I'm a farm boy. I inherit...
Farm Boy Makes Good.
Yes.
A nice. I hope it's a good ending. I'd have to go and see it to make sure it is. Did you have any problems with the fantastic technical tricks that there are in the film?
Well, a lot of the times we would have to just imagine. There would be a blue screen outside the cockpit, like the film clip we just saw. I mean, here we were in these gun ports having a great time, but...
In reality?
Well... We were in the gun ports, but all we saw was a blue screen. So George would tell us to look, from right to left, like, zoom, there it goes, and boom,
So you had to pretend
certainly.
To see things.
But you see, people understand, in a way, that's no different than driving a car in a film, which is in fact being towed by a camera car. You're pretending to drive. It's no different than...
all the tricks of making a film.
It's all make-believe.
But at least you didn't have to wear any of those very complicated costumes when you were playing your part of Luke Skywalker. Because some of the actors, in fact, who were playing the baddies, they really did have quite a time of it. Were playing the Imperial forces, they had to wear space-age armor and funny helmets. Talking of funny helmets, John,
Where is John?
Talking of funny helmets,
my
John.
gosh. John's never looked better, has he?
Oh, John, did you hear that? Mark said
Don't
you never
say
look
that.
better.
Don't say
Come round
that.
here. Come round here. Climb over. John, you're not very frightening. I hate to tell you. Not convincing as a
Now,
badge at
this,
all.
mind you, was worn by actors in the England's hottest summer.
First of all, I say I never had so much fun in a motion picture since I was a kid and went to see Buck Rogers with Buster Crabbe. You see how quickly they forget Buster? Oh, that was a big... They show those now on Channel 13 around, and those were done, I think, in the early 30s. And that was considered, you know, really far out.
Right.
They were way ahead of their time. But Star Wars is an amazing film.
It's exactly what inspired George to make it,
Really?
though, because he has that great love for... He loved the Alex Raymond illustrations for Flash Gordon. He loved Buck Rogers. And he just felt that he wanted to make a movie where there were real heroes again. He thought, you know, with just cops busting people for dope and this and that, you know, he said, now let's go to a galaxy far, far away where we don't have to know why these guys are bad. They're just bad.
Well, what it was a Western. It's a intergalactic Western with the good guys very carefully delineated. You know where the bad guys are. You know the good guys.
Yeah.
You got the hero and his buddy who go to get the princess, right? Leia.
Yeah.
And it's all of those composite things together, and it's just for pure fun. You don't have to sit and say, what is the message behind this?
No.
What probing deep message? I understand
it's-
some people. They told me some of the youngsters have been back 5, 6, and 7 times to see it.
We just visited the White House at that AFI film thing, and Amy
Yeah.
Carter had seen it 5 times. We gave her a stormtrooper helmet from the movie,
Oh, one of the white ones?
helmets, and I told her to wear it at the dinner table every night.
So she doesn't have to see Billy. Yeah, that would be it.
And I get to rescue a princess, and, you know...
It looked like a campy thing to make.
Well, sure, and it was so hard. A lot of times, it's a true story. Harrison Ford, who plays the space pirate in the film, at one point threatened to tie George up and make him say his own lines at gunpoint. I mean, the dialogue was a little bit difficult. I remember there was one line that I just begged him to take out of the screenplay, and he finally did. And
you
it's
remember
when,
the line?
Yes, boy, I'll never forget it as long as I live. I sometimes dream about this line. It was just coming upon the exploded planet of the princess,
Right.
Alderaan, and it's
Alderaan.
totally been blown away. And Harrison says, look, kid, I've done my part of the bargain. When I get to an asteroid, you, the old man, and the droids get dropped off. And my line was, but we can't turn back. Fear is their greatest defense. I doubt if the actual security there is any greater than it was on Aquilai or Soest. And what there is most likely directed towards a large-scale assault. And I thought, who talks like this, George? I mean, this is really not fair because, you know, we're the ones that are going to get vegetables thrown at us, not you.
It's a lot of fun.
And with me are 3 stars of Star Wars. Carrie Fisher, who plays the princess, Mark Hamill, who plays the innocent and brave young hero, and Harrison Ford, the only movie actor named after 2 presidents, who is the dashing, daring space pilot who helps them all escape from danger. Good morning, all.
Good morning.
Is that nice to be named after 2 presidents?
It's never come up before.
Well, they're 2 of the most famous presidents in American history.
I'm gratified.
I have not seen, with the exception of Rocky, in the last few years, the kind of audience participation and audience reaction for and to a film that we have for Star Wars.
It's great to sit in a theater and see people really enjoy something like that.
Have you done it? Have you been?
Yeah.
Any of you? Have you gone to
yes.
see a theater just
yeah.
anonymously, just go in as a patron?
It's easy to be anonymous at this point, really. Nobody recognizes us when we go into a theater, which is a pleasure, I must say.
And you knew George Lucas because you were in one of his other big hits, American Graffiti, and very good in that, I must say. You've been in 2 enormous popular successes. American Graffiti is one of the top 25 money makers, and this is going to be sky high, you should pardon the expression.
God
I must
bless
ask you a
George
question.
Lucas.
Tell me how it was like, you 3 are young actors and actresses, and you worked with one of the superb actors of our time, Alec Guinness. What was it like to work with that kind of a master, just like Olivier?
He spent the first half hour of our acquaintanceship trying to get me a flat, on the telephone trying to get me a flat. He's enormously generous.
Now, let's talk about the latest aspect of your career, which is, I mean, it's quite extraordinary. I mean, all these years in movies, now all of a sudden you've hit the jackpot with a thing called Star Wars, which I saw last week, and I think just loved it. I think it's super. I think it's marvelous escapism, and it'll clean up. But I mean, how did you come to be involved with a piece of science fiction like that?
Well, it arrived as a script. I was just finishing a picture in Hollywood another day to go, and the script arrived on my dressing table. And I heard that it had been delivered by George Lucas. And I thought, well, that's rather impressive, because he's an up-and-coming and very respect-worthy young director. So, and then when I opened it and found it was science fiction, I thought, oh, crumbs, you know, this is simply not for me. And then I started reading, and it seemed to me the dialogue was pretty ropey. But I had to go on turning the page. And I mean, that's an essential in any script. You've got to know what happens next, or what's going to be said next. And I went on reading, and I thought, no, I like this. If only we can get some of the dialogue altered. And then I met him, we got on very well, and I found myself doing it, that's all. It's no good trying to think of this character in terms of a psychologically rational man. There's a bit of magic about it. And I just trust that the camera and the backgrounds will provide the rest.
Playing the role of Princess Leia was fun a lot of times. Well, it wasn't fun all the time. After about 2 hours in the garbage room, the fun started to wear off, and your skin started to wrinkle, and your rubber suit didn't fit right anymore. But we had a good time. When we did the swing across, it would have been fun if we'd been allowed to do it a second time. But it was like doing the upside-down roller coaster. We did it one time, and it was scary. And then if we'd gotten to do it again, it would have been fun. But they didn't let us do it again.
And who she is going to end up with is still anybody's guess. I will say that Luke is more devoted to her, I think, than Han Solo is.
I would probably describe Han Solo as the cynical, mercenary space pirate with the cream filling, you know.
In the presence of lots of other folks, all of whom are babbling about Star Wars, is Carrie Fisher. What an exciting thing to have happen in one of your first major roles, isn't it?
Yeah, very.
Was it a surprise to you, or did you have the feeling that
Well, I knew we were doing a good movie, but I never expected a reaction like this, you know. It's quite a surprise.
How did this come about? The two pictures in which you've been featured, they're quite different parts. I would imagine in casting for this one, shampoo would not have been taken into account to any great extent.
Well, they both have a certain kind of strength for whatever reasons. I mean, the other girl is very precocious and sophisticated, and she goes after what she wants, however destructive it is or whatever. But in Star Wars, the girl is a fighter and goes after what she wants.
The imagination that George Lucas displays in what he has assembled here is phenomenal. But all of you had to have that kind of imagination because, of course, the things that we see that are so charming weren't present while you were shooting.
No, when I had to watch my planet blown up, I was looking at some guy's hand with a blackboard behind him with a circle with what's supposed to be my planet. It's not a really place that's very homey, a circle on a chalkboard. But so we had to envision all of that going up in smoke with a guy who looked like he wanted to go to lunch as soon as possible.
It had to be much more fun. I think somebody's going to lunch here. It had to be much more fun to work with the robots. That must have been a kick, wasn't it?
Oh, it was terrific. There were really nice guys inside there, too.
Yeah.
So you sort of, you know, you forgot they were robots.
They're going to be poster people, I think, before we're going to see posters up on walls of kids' rooms and so forth.
They're doing dolls of all the robots and the people, and
yeah, there's got to be a Carrie Fisher doll along with the Cher dolls and everything.
Yes, with her hairy earphones and also her Athenian dinner party look as well from the end.
From Kenner's Star Wars collection, each sold separately. Large-size Darth Vader with his lightsaber. Princess Leia, champion of the rebel cause. With her defender, Luke Skywalker. You can swing him into action on his grappling hook. And load Chewbacca's laser crossbow. Star Wars large-size action figures. Up to 15 inches tall and ready for action. Large-size Darth Vader, Chewbacca, Luke Skywalker, Princess Leia, each sold separately from Kenner.
It's Darth Vader, watch out! And he's got a lightsaber.
It's Kenner's Star Wars action figures, each sold separately.
I got you now, Ben Kenobi.
With R2-D2 and C-3PO. There's even Chewbacca and Han Solo.
Someone's coming, Chewie. Who's there? It's Princess Leia and Luke Skywalker. Now I know the Force is with us.
Darth Vader, R2-D2, C-3PO, and other Kenner Star Wars action figures, each sold separately.
Birth defects strike over 250,000 infants a year in this country alone. What can we do about it? Plenty. You know, research has shown that some birth defects can be prevented by proper prenatal care, and that includes good nutrition.
Well, that's not bad, but 4 pounds in 2 weeks isn't terrific.
I'm Mark Hamill, asking you to protect the unborn and the newborn.
When I started writing this, I found the most intriguing thing was to take 2 robots and make them into human beings and make them the most interesting characters in terms of the comedy element and the sort of, I wanted to make the film around them, use them as a framework for the film. And I knew when I did that I would be getting myself into a lot of trouble.
Well, I suppose, I'm sorry, I keep kicking you. It happened, I was appearing in the West End as Guildenstern in Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead. And one day my agent said, go and meet George Lucas, who I said, because I didn't know about films in those days. You know. And she explained, and I didn't want to go because she said it's part of a robot. So I said, you're mad. Don't play robots. I may wear a false beard occasionally, but I wear clothes. And she persuaded me to meet George, thank goodness.
Now, this was in England?
In England, in London, yes. So I went to meet him, and, you know, you've got to like him, haven't you? It's very exciting.
I think everyone likes George Lucas.
I was warned he was very shy, and so that made me a bit nervous, because you've got to do all the work.
But after you said you read the script, what, 4 or 5 times?
5 times, didn't understand a word. I mean,
it must have been
all
a
those
difficult
words,
script.
What's a Dianogo? And the only thing I did get out of reading it 5 times was that the part that George thought I might do was wonderful. He happened to be made of metal, but he was a human being with a huge heart and soul and personality, and a very likable person.
And it's almost a part of immersion in a Western. It's almost a Western character that you're playing. Do you agree with that?
Well, the character is the kind of character that appears in many different kinds of American films, in Westerns and in contemporary dramas. It's a common character. All of the characters are very simple kinds of archetypical characters.
Right. Hey, you see this Milner, you tell him I'm looking for him, huh? Ain't he neat?
In fact, a lot of the elements of Han Solo are a lot like Bob Falfa in American Graffiti. But I don't, I hope they're not the same person. I never intended them to be. The jump to hyperspace is like, it's like the drag racing in American Graffiti.
Did any particular thing grab you as far as the special effects and where you just thought, wow, I didn't know it was going to be like that?
Well, that opening shot is a stroke of genius. I don't want to describe it for fear of ruining it for somebody else, but there is an opening special effects shot which most audiences applaud. It's almost the first shot of the picture, and that's very, very nice to see.
Yes.
You know that you have the audience from that point on.
Yes. Have you always been a kind of Buck Rogers, Flash Gordon, sci-fi fan?
No, I never have. As a matter of fact, I don't think I've ever seen one of those Buck Rogers or Flash Gordon
Well,
serials.
now we have something in common, Harrison, because
you haven't either.
No, I never read that stuff when
No,
I was a kid.
neither did I.
Never interested me, as a matter of fact. And I've never.
Well, George did. George, but this is George's movie, and George was able to write something which was accessible to my intelligence, so that I could come up with something that I'd never seen before.
Well, that's what is interesting to me, is the fact that people like you and me and others that I've talked with who say, well, I don't like sci-fi, I don't like that sort of thing.
But I like this.
Wow, I love Star Wars.
Yeah.
Why do we like this?
Well, it's a fantasy. It's not science fiction so much as it is space fantasy. And it's about people. It's about, it's finally about people and not finally about science. So the energy of the movie goes towards exploring these human relationships, and I think that's what makes it so accessible to people.
Is there any pressure now with the sequel at all that you feel like you have to do something bigger and better?
Well, there is a certain amount of pressure, but I didn't want to go that route. They try to, the one-upsmanship way of making a sequel. It's just another adventure, a slightly different story, using all the same characters, but the effects and things are off in a different direction. So I think it'll be as interesting, but in its own way, a completely different movie.
When Star Wars was in the making there, and you brought in John Williams, does he look at the film and come up with something, or how did the concept all start? What was it?
Usually what happens was we went to him before we even started shooting. We wanted to use him because of his background and what he had done. But at the time he saw the film, and we discussed various ideas for certain parts. We had some sample classical music that we played for him and said, we like this kind of theme, we like this kind of feeling. And he was able to take that and adapt some of that idea into his own original music. He, using the Wagnerian tradition, he assigned a theme to each of the characters and interwove them all throughout the movie.
That's right. There have been so many spin-offs as a result of Star Wars that I guess every week we show some new product. It started off with T-shirts and belt buckles, and what we had Star Wars wallpaper on a couple of weeks ago. What you said originated
in England.
In England. Okay, what can we look for next?
Well, Kenner has a lot of really nice material coming out next year that we just saw yesterday. They have those little figures and the little X-Wing fighters and things. Well, they have a Death Star module and the Millennium Falcon spaceship and a lot more set pieces to put those little figures in. They really look nice. That's, of course, one of the most fun things about making a film like this is playing with the toys. Speculation about sequels to Star Wars, and we are working on story material that will develop into potentially one or more motion pictures that will use the same characters. I like to consider them different adventures rather than direct sequels.
Obviously, the Empire is still there, Darth Vader is still there, and it's going to also evolve with new characters coming in, new problems, new worlds.
It's still being written, the sequel, and we're all signed for them to do them, Mark Harrison and I, and the robots, 3PO and R2. But that's as far as I know. I heard that they were probably going to have an ice planet and a tropical planet, like the fourth moon of Yavin.
They put us on a gigantic playground and gave us mounds of toys to play with. It was like playing Cowboys and Indians for money.
It was a lot of fun. How much fun? About this much.
It's got everything in it. It's like the Wizard of Oz. It's like Robin Hood, Snow White. It's, you know, it's got the Tin Man. It's got Laurel and Hardy, to my mind. It's got everything.
And it's another and very important step in the career of Carrie Fisher, I'm sure.
I hope so.
Thank you much for talking with us.
Harrison, thank you so much for talking with us today. It's been a pleasure meeting you. And this is Bobby Wygant at 20th Century Fox Studios in Hollywood.
Thank you. Very pleasant.
Nice interview. Thank you.
My pleasure.
I really could identify with you on, you know, the fact that I went to it knowing this wasn't my kind of film.